So imagine holding like a lottery ticket that's worth $1 million, right?
Yeah.
But then, maybe 3 minutes before the actual drawing, the state just suddenly decides to change the physics of the ping pong balls inside the machine.
Oh, man, just a total nightmare scenario.
Right. I mean, that feeling of absolute stomach-dropping panic, that is exactly what is radiating through the Churchill Downs grandstand right now.
Oh, for sure. It's like this massive collective gasp, followed immediately by just thousands of people frantically erasing their programs. Like all the math they spent all week doing just, woo, it completely evaporated.
It's gone.
Yeah.
And that is exactly why we're here. So welcome to our deep dive into the source material. And, if you are joining us today, I already know who you are. You're an advanced player.
Yeah, you're not a beginner.
Exactly. You're a mid-range handicapper.
Yeah.
And you don't just understand pace, but you're already fluent in the herd geometry handicapping system. So today, we have a highly exclusive mission. We are breaking down the newly updated final pick sheet from the Racing Form report for the Grade 1 Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs.
1.25 miles of pure stress.
Oh, absolutely. It is Friday, May 1st, 2026, and we are staring down a pivotal, late-breaking shift in the field.
Yeah, because we just had 3 major scratches hit the wire. I mean, this is huge. Silent Tactic, Full Effort, and Right to Party are officially out of the Derby.
Wow.
Right. And because of that, the also eligibles, Great White and Ocelli, they actually draw into the starting gate.
Which changes everything. Or, well, it changes a lot, because we all know what amateur handicappers do when they see a news alert like this. They look at the scratches, they panic, and they immediately ask, okay, who is the new best horse?
Which is just the worst possible way to look at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you understand herd geometry, you know that is entirely the wrong question. The question you need to be asking right now is, how did this change the shape of the moving pressure system?
Yes. Because when you remove 3 massive bodies from a tightly packed 20-horse field, right, and then you inject 2 completely different physical profiles, the fundamental physics of the race, they just change completely. You are altering the entire aerodynamics of the pack.
Right.
But, and this is key, the final pick sheet from the Racing Form report points out something really crucial. The race didn't completely flip on its head.
It didn't.
No, it didn't turn from a speed fest into a closer's dream. Instead, the race actually tightened. It became a cleaner, more concentrated tactical environment.
Okay, so the analogy I keep coming back to is like a complex fluid dynamic.
Yeah.
Think of a rushing river with a giant boulder sitting right in the middle of it.
Okay, I like that.
If you suddenly airlift that boulder out of the water, the river doesn't stop flowing, right? It doesn't magically turn into a calm lake.
Right, the energy has to go somewhere.
Exactly. The water simply creates a cleaner, faster, more direct channel for all the remaining debris to travel through. So today, our mission is to map that new channel. Let's look at the geometry shift. Like, what did these specific scratches actually do to the physical space on the dirt?
Well, we have to start with the core herd geometry principle. A horse race is never, ever just a collection of individual time trials.
Right, the herd animals.
Exactly. They are reacting to the biological pressure around them constantly. They operate in a moving pressure system made up of, anchors, disruptors, satellites, and ghosts.
The 4 profiles.
Right. So when we analyze who left the field today, we cannot look at their names. We have to look at the structural role they were designed to play. And the most impactful departure, without a doubt, is Silent Tactic. He operates with a P2 running style.
Okay, let's break down that P2 designation for a second, just to refresh. The P stands for presser, and the 2 indicates his early speed points on the Brisnet scale. So in the physical reality of the race, that means he isn't trying to steal the lead, right? But he wants to be right in the slipstream of the front runners. In herd geometry, he was occupying prime real estate in what we call the second flight lane.
Yes, and his removal literally vacates a massive chunk of critical physical space right behind the early speed. I mean, he was the boulder in your river analogy.
Oh, yeah.
So without him there, the horses drawn inside and outside of his starting gate suddenly have this massive pocket of clean air to just drop into.
That's huge.
It is. And then you have the scratch of Full Effort. The physical implications here are massive, too. Full Effort is a legitimate closer. He is an S0.
Right, an S0 is a pure sustainer. 0 early speed points. Like he just drops back, saves every single ounce of energy, and makes one sustained run at the end.
Exactly. And he's not just any closer, right? He's coming off a grade 3 win in the Jeff Ruby Stakes with a massive 145.8 prime power rating.
Let's talk about what prime power actually measures for a second, because it's so vital here. It's that algorithm that synthesizes a horse's speed, class, pace, form, weight, all into a single number, right?
Yep, it's the ultimate class metric. So a 145.8 means Fulliford isn't just some horse who picks up tired runners at the back. He has the raw class to actively pass good horses in the stretch.
Yeah.
So by taking Fulliford out of the mix, you fundamentally weaken the threat of a late race meltdown.
I really want to focus on that late vacuum race shape you're talking about, because in a normal year, if the pace is suicidal, the field stretches out like a rubber band, right? And eventually it just snaps.
Oh, absolutely.
The closers get this clean runway to fly down the center of the track. But horses are pack hunters. Like closers often key off the momentum of other closers making a move.
Oh, that is a brilliant point about the biomechanics of the herd, because when one elite closer starts rolling, the others, they feel that visual and physical cue to go with them.
Right, they see a horse accelerating and their brain says, oh, we're going now?
Exactly. It creates a wave of momentum. But with Fulliford safely back in the barn, that late wave loses its strongest current. The late vacuum race shape becomes incredibly unlikely now.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about the third scratch, right to party?
So right to party is also an S0 sustainer, but his underlying numbers reveal him to just be mid-pack noise. Taking him out simply cleans up the traffic in the back half of the field.
It's just one less body to run around.
Exactly. It removes a hurdle. However, the true complexity comes from looking at the two horses who actually draw into the field to replace them, right? Great White, the number 21, and Ocelli, the number 22.
Okay, let's look at Great White. He comes in with an EP5 running style, early presser, with 5 speed points. So he is definitely bringing early pressure, but his speed figures are glaringly low for the first Saturday in May. I mean, his last race speed was an 80.
Which is just not dirty material.
Right. His absolute peak lifetime dirt speed is a 93. And just for context for everyone listening, the average winning Derby speed figure is usually hovering around, what, 103 to 105?
Easily, yeah. So Great White is the textbook definition of pace noise. He brings cheap speed to the front. He possesses the raw adrenaline to run with the elite horses for about maybe 5 furlongs.
But then he hits a wall.
Exactly. He is a drastically weaker finisher. He just lacks the cardiovascular capacity in the class to sustain that pressure. And then you have Ocelli in the 22 hole.
Right, the other alternate.
Yeah, he is an S2 sustainer, just a really non-threatening closer who has literally never breached a 92 speed figure in his life.
So if we synthesize this entirely, it feels like the cheap speed increased slightly with Great White drawing in, but the true devastating finishers got much weaker with Fulliford leaving.
Precisely.
So the overall DNA of the race didn't drastically alter, but the winning lane, that second flight real estate we talked about earlier, it just became remarkably less crowded.
The traffic jam cleared out in the exact spot you want to be sitting.
But wait, let me challenge this premise for a second, because I know people are thinking this. If we just injected an early pace horse in Great White and we simultaneously lost a legitimate closer in Fulliford, shouldn't that mean the front end of this race is going to be even more chaotic?
You would think so.
Right, because the public is going to look at Great White and assume he's going to push the pace. Shouldn't we expect the front end to just collapse entirely, which would perfectly set up the remaining sustainer ghosts in the field?
Okay, so you would totally assume so on the surface. But when we actually look at the biomechanics of how horses actually fail, we see where the public is going to make a crucial mistake at the betting window today.
Okay, wait on me.
We have to apply the herd geometry rule that distinguishes a sharp collapse from a gradual erosion.
Right.
A sharp collapse only happens when you have a genuinely suicidal pace, meaning multiple elite speed horses lock horns and push each other to maximum oxygen debt at the exact same time. They hit a physical wall and practically stop walking in the stretch.
Right, because their lactic acid buildup is so severe from like a 45-second half mile that their muscles literally cannot contract quickly anymore.
Exactly that mechanism. But Great White is not an elite speed horse.
His speed figure is an 80.
Exactly. He is pace noise. He acts as a disruptor, not a true anchor. He is going to force the pace, to be honest, sure, but because he doesn't have the class or the sustaining speed to push a true 45-second half mile and keep going, he cannot create a suicidal environment. He will drop off way before that critical threshold is reached.
Okay, so the elite front runners are going to be annoyed by him. They might have to expend a tiny bit more energy early to secure their position, but they aren't going to be physically destroyed by him.
Exactly. Therefore, we are absolutely not looking at a full meltdown that benefits a deep ghost coming from, like, 20th place.
Makes sense.
The shape, as defined by the Racing Form report, is a second flight derby. The pressure Great White applies is going to cause a gradual erosion of the speed, which perfectly favors a satellite, a horse who sits just behind the push, avoids the chaos, and gets first run as the leaders slowly tire out.
Man, that brings us perfectly to analyzing that front layer. Because understanding why that speed is going to slowly erode rather than dominate the race is the key to unlocking this entire puzzle.
It really is.
We're looking at what the report specifically labels fragile pressure. We have 5 horses making up this front layer, right? So Happy in the 8-hole, Potenti in the 14, Pavlovian in the 16, Intrepido in the 3, and our new disruptor, Great White, way out in the 21.
Yeah, let's dig into the Brisnet data for these runners, because this is where the false anchor concept from herd geometry really proves its worth.
Right, false anchors.
Take So Happy. He just won the Santa Anita Derby with a 103 speed rating, and he boasts a 144.1 prime power.
Which looks great on paper.
Oh, exactly. The amateur bettor is going to see that grade 1 win, and they are going to just unload their bankroll on him.
And then you have Potente. He operates as an EP6, but he completely failed as the heavy favorite in his last start.
Right, he folded. And we also cannot ignore Intrepido, the 3-horse. He's a 50-1 long shot and EP4, but he just fired off a razor-sharp 4-furlong workout at Churchill Downs in 45 seconds flat.
Oh, wow. 45 flat.
Yeah. When a horse shows that kind of morning speed over the actual track surface they're about to race on, he is sitting on a massive early move. He's going to be sent hard from the inside rail.
And finally, we have Pavlovian, drawn outside in the 16. He is an EP5, sitting at 30-1, but he is actively downgraded by the report. The analysis points out that he has this terrible habit of fighting the jockey and burning far too much early energy.
Yes, let's look at his pace figures from the Louisiana Derby. He threw down a 107E1 and a 106E2 pace figure.
Let's talk about what those pace figures mean physically for those visualizing the race. A 107E1 means his speed from the gate to the first quarter mile is totally elite.
Very elite.
Right. And 106E2 means he sustains that elite speed through the half mile. So he is incredibly fast early. But he completely lacks the psychological off switch to relax his stride. He just runs on pure nervous adrenaline.
Which is a death sentence in a 20-horse field.
Exactly. So here is the multi-million-dollar question. Why are we classifying this group of 5 horses as fragile pressure instead of true anchors? I mean, if So Happy just posted a 103 speed figure at Santa Anita, why can't he just take the lead, dictate the pace, and wire this field?
Because of the foundational herd geometry rule, speed only matters if it gets comfortable.
Right. Comfort is everything.
It is. A true anchor is a horse that can secure the lead, clear the field, drop the bit, meaning they literally relax their jaw and their stride and conserve energy for the final quarter mile. But look at the physical geometry we just laid out.
It's a mess.
It's a total mess. You have Intrepido on the deep inside in the 3-hole, loaded with intent after a 45-second workout. He has to establish position. You have Pavlovian drawn outside in the 16, who physically only knows one way to run fast and anxious. And now you have Great White drawn in the absolute parking lot in the 21.
We really need to talk about the physics of the 21 hole at Churchill Downs. Because of the chute placement and the angle to that first turn, a horse starting that far outside has to sprint incredibly hard just to avoid being caught 5 or 6 paths wide on the turn, which is, well, it's mathematical death.
Yeah, you lose so much ground.
So Great White has to send. He has absolutely no choice.
And the herd geometry perfectly captures this trap. It is exactly like 5 guys trying to sprint and squeeze through a single revolving door at the exact same time.
None of them are getting into the lobby gracefully.
No, they are just going to bump shoulders, step on toes, and completely exhaust each other before they ever even reach the backstretch.
The anchor clearance rule explicitly states that if an anchor cannot clear or relax, you must actively downgrade it. And none of these leaders are getting a breather. Great White and Pavlovian are pure disruptors. They have no chance of actually winning this race.
None.
Their only structural purpose today is to break somebody else's rhythm.
Which leads us directly to the resolution of the race. Because the front layer is fragile, meaning they will not get a breather, but the raw underlying quality of the disruptors isn't overwhelmingly high, they're going to slowly bleed out energy rather than hit a brick wall.
Right.
This is the biophysics of that gradual erosion race shape we were talking about.
And we know from herd geometry rule 3, the satellite priority rule, that if the front is unstable but not suicidal, satellites are the absolute prime winning profile. The speed up front fades slowly, the stalker sitting just behind them gets first run at the lead, and the stalker wins.
And remember the scratches we discussed at the top of the deep dive. They cleared out the traffic in this exact zone. The second flat is now a pristine, wide open runway.
Man, here's where the source material gets really interesting. We've established that the speed is going to slowly erode, leaving the door wide open for the second flight. The final pick sheet calls this physical space the wind zone, or Tier 1. So who are the elite satellites perfectly positioned to inherit this race?
The primary pick, without a doubt, the horse sitting perfectly in the crosshairs of this entire geometric setup, is Commandment, the number 6 horse.
Commandment. Okay, he is 6-1 on the morning line. He operates with a P3 running style. He just won the Florida Derby, a class rating of 119.9, and his sire is the legendary Into Mischief.
Commandment is the absolute textbook definition of an efficient satellite. I mean, think about what the scratch of Silent Tactic did.
Right, the other P2.
Yeah, Silent Tactic was a P2, meaning he would have been fighting Commandment for that exact same pocket of air. With him gone, Commandment essentially gets handed the keys to the cleanest trip profile in the entire field. He sits exactly where the race collapses into his control.
Because of his P3 style, he doesn't actually need the lead. He possesses the tactical natural speed to brake cleanly, sit maybe 4th or 5th along the rail from the 6 hole, watch the 5 guys jam up a revolving door in front of him, and then simply tip out and glide past them when their lactic acid builds up.
It's beautifully simple, but we have to have a serious conversation about the number 18 horse, Further Ado.
Oh, yes, we do.
Because if a bettor is just looking at raw underlying data, Further Ado is a terrifying monster.
The data on him is staggering. Like, he is 6-1, he has a P6 running style, he boasts the highest prime power in the entire 20-horse field at 150.7. He won the Bluegrass Stakes with an incredibly efficient 104 early and 101 late pace split. He's sired by Gunrunner, and his last race speed figure was a 105. That is the absolute highest last race speed rating of anyone lining up today.
Yeah, Further Ado is an absolute freak of nature on paper. He just has the highest ceiling of any athlete on the track.
So here's my question. If Further Ado has the best raw numbers, right, a 105 speed rating, the highest prime power, the most elite pace splits, why is the Racing Form Report definitively ranking Commandment above him as the primary win bet? Are we really sacrificing that kind of raw talent purely because of trip geometry?
We are, and we do it confidently.
Really?
Yes. Because in a 20-horse compression derby, trip geometry overrides raw talent every single time. A superior horse running a terrible trip will lose to a very good horse running a perfect trip.
That makes sense.
We turn to herd geometry rule 4, the outside satellite rule. When 2 or more satellites look equal, favor the outside satellite if the race is likely to snap or compress. But wait, breaking from post 18, Further Ado is forced to be an outside satellite.
Which means he theoretically avoids the fading speed and the potential rail traps where tired horses block your path, right?
He avoids the traps, sure, but it also makes him incredibly trip-dependent and mathematically disadvantaged. Think about the physical distance he has to cover.
Oh, right. The sheer yardage.
Exactly. Because Commandment is a P3 starting from the inside 6 hole, his style allows him to save ground on the rail, stalk efficiently, and inherit the lead with a short, sharp, energy-saving move. Further Ado, out in the 18, will be forced to make a wide, sweeping, prolonged move around the far turn just to get past that collapsing speed.
It's pure mathematics at that point. The difference between running on the inside rail versus running 4 paths wide around 2 turns is roughly the equivalent of running an extra 50 to 60 feet.
It's a huge penalty.
Right. You might be the faster runner, but you are covering significantly more ground. Commandment gets to run a physically shorter race. Now, Further Ado has the immense talent to sweep past them anyway, which is exactly why he is still graded in Tier 1, but Commandment has the trip.
Absolutely. And I want to pause here and unpack something you teased earlier, which the report hints at heavily when looking at these 2 horses. We really need to talk about the breeding the bloodline.
Yes, let's go there.
Look at the sires of our top Tier 1 horses. Commandment is by Into Mischief. Further Ado is by Gunrunner.
This is such a crucial piece of the puzzle. We talk all the time about how herd geometry gives you an edge over the betting public because the public only looks at raw speed. But when you look at these bloodlines, you have to ask, like, are the breeders already catching on to this geometry?
The evidence strongly suggests they are. Modern bloodstock agents are incredibly data-driven now. For decades, the American breeding industry was just obsessed with pure wire-to-wire speed. They wanted brilliant, fast horses.
But pure speed is fragile, as we just discussed with the revolving door analogy.
Exactly. What Into Mischief and Gunrunner passed down to their progeny isn't just physical ability, it's a specific psychological temperament. They are actively breeding for satellite temperaments.
Wow.
They are breeding horses specifically to have the mental patience to sit forth, take a massive amount of kickback dirt in their face, switch off their anxiety, and just wait for the jockey's cue.
It is a profound shift in the sport's genetics. A horse like Commandment doesn't panic when horses pass him early. A horse like Further Ado can rate his own speed. They have the biophysical maturity to operate within the herd geometry system as efficient stalkers. They aren't running on pure flight response.
It's a total game changer.
It's fascinating. But moving back to the immediate race, because the report doesn't just stop at the likely winners. A mid-range handicapper listening to this wants to know how to beat the chalk. They want to know how to inflate those exotic payouts. That brings us to Tier 2, the value strikes.
Yes. And this brings us to a horse I absolutely love in this setup, the Puma, the number 9 horse. He is sitting at 10-1 on the morning line. He operates with a P3 running style, exactly like Commandment.
Yep.
He is sired by Essential Quality, which fits perfectly into our discussion about stamina and mental temperament. And crucially, he has a very strong timing profile.
We really need to pull up the tape from the Florida Derby on this guy because it perfectly illustrates the biophysics of what we expect to happen today. In the Florida Derby, Commandment and the Puma finished 1-2.
Yep.
And the geometry of that race was nearly identical to what we are mapping today. Commandment got the jump, and the Puma chased him home, just mirroring his every single move.
Because they are both P3 satellites, they naturally gravitate to the exact same sweet spot on the track. But here's the thing, because Commandment actually won the prep race, the public is going to hammer him at the windows.
Oh, for sure.
Commandment will be 4-1 or 5-1 by post time, while the Puma is going to float up to 10-1 or maybe even 12-1.
That is exactly why he is graded as the value strike. He is the perfect beneficiary of this newly thinned out second flight. With silent tactic out, there is physically more room for both Commandment and the Puma to operate side by side without bumping into each other. At 10-1, the Puma offers massive overlay value for the player looking to leverage the shape of the race without paying a premium for the favorite.
And the second horse in Tier 2 is equally compelling. The 12, Chief Wallaby. He is 8-1, an EP5 running style. He carries a 143.1 prime power. But the most vital piece of information regarding Chief Wallaby is a significant equipment change today. The trainer is adding blinkers.
Oh, let's talk about the mechanics of blinkers, because they aren't just a fashion statement. A horse's eyes are set on the sides of its head, giving them nearly 350-degree panoramic vision. They see everything moving around them, which can severely trigger their instinctual flight response.
Yeah, they're prey animals. So when you add blinkers, you are placing a physical cup right behind the eye. You are restricting their peripheral vision and forcing their visual focus entirely forward.
Right.
Chemically, this reduces anxiety about horses rushing up beside them, but it also really sharpens their early focus. They tend to break sharper from the gate and show way more early foot.
So Chief Wallaby gets the single biggest upgrade from the scratches. His EP5 style, combined with the new blinkers, gives him incredibly versatile positioning. If the pace somehow softens, say, Great White completely misses the break and the revolving door doesn't jam up, Chief Wallaby has the newly sharpened early speed to act as a pressing anchor. He can just take control.
But if the pace stays honest and fragile as we project, he can simply tuck in, ally on his class, and act as a satellite. The blinkers give him tactical options, which makes him incredibly dangerous in this specific geometry.
We also have to mention Tier 3 from the report, the underneath keys. This specifically highlights the number 11, Incredible, 20-1, operating with a P2 running style.
Incredible is a fascinating case study in realistic expectations. I mean, he fits the exact profile of a runner who is smart enough to completely avoid the main fight up front. He drops back, saves ground, and stays entirely out of the chaos.
He knows his lane.
Exactly. He simply doesn't have the explosive turn of foot, the instantaneous acceleration to catch elite satellites like Commandment or Further Ado.
But he doesn't stop. He just grinds away at one steady, relentless pace to pick up the pieces of the tired horses falling backward, sneaking in for third or fourth. He is a perfect horse to anchor the bottom of your trifecta or superfecta tickets. Like, he isn't mathematically fast enough to win, but he is geometrically perfectly placed to hit the board at a massive price.
Spot on. So we have mapped the fragile front layer, we have found our winners in the clean air of the second flight, and we have identified our value strikes. Now we have to execute the most profitable part of the herd geometry system.
Fades.
We have to identify the horses that are going to ruin millions of amateur tickets today. The false traps. The back half. Let's talk about downgrading the ghosts.
Oh, we have to start with the elephant in the room. Renegade, the #1 horse. He is the 4-1 morning line favorite. He just won the Arkansas Derby in commanding fashion. He has the reigning champion jockey Gerardo Ortiz Jr. in the irons. I mean, the public is going to hammer this horse until the tote board literally breaks.
And we are going to completely fade him on top.
Okay, wait, let me play devil's advocate for the listener who might be getting really nervous right now.
Go for it.
Renegade just won a Grade 1 prep race. He posted a massive 97 speed figure in that Arkansas Derby. The public sees the coveted inside one hole. They see Gerardo Ortiz. They see the Grade 1 trophy. Are we really telling the mid-range handicapper to toss the 4-1 favorite in the Kentucky Derby?
We are absolutely tossing him from the win spot, yes. And if we strictly apply the herd geometry logic, the reasoning is airtight. You cannot let the jockey's name blind you to the actual physics of the race. Renegade's running style is an S1. He is a sustainer.
Right.
He's a pure closer. In our system, that fundamentally makes him a ghost. And the golden rule of this entire system is ghosts collect pieces, satellites collect wins.
Let's unpack the biomechanics of why that rule actually exists. A ghost needs a late vacuum race shape to win. They need the pace up front to be so brutally, ridiculously fast early that the entire front half of the field practically collapses from lactic acid overload in the final furlong. They need the leaders to literally stop.
They require a full-pace meltdown to flatter their late run. But what did we spend the first half of this deep dive establishing?
The fragile pressure.
Exactly. The front layer is characterized by fragile pressure leading to gradual erosion. It is not a sharp collapse. Great White and Pavlovian are going to annoy the pace, sure, but they do not possess the sustained elite class to induce a 44-second half-mile that destroys the field.
The leaders are going to slow down incrementally, not abruptly. So by the time Renegade finally gets his giant, sustained, visually impressive run going from the back of the pack.
Commandment and Further Ado, our elite satellites, will have already inherited the lead. They will get the jump. Renegade will be closing like a freight train down the center of the track. The crowd will be roaring. The track announcer will be screaming his name, but it is a complete optical illusion.
Wow.
He will simply run out of physical real estate before he can catch horses that got a 3-second head start on their sprint.
Furthermore, we have to tie this back to the scratches we discussed at the opening. Remember Full Effort. Full Effort was the other major elite closer in this field. Without him in the race to help push that late wave and create collective momentum among the backmarkers, the closer's lane becomes an incredibly lonely and less potent place to be.
Right.
Renegade has to do all the heavy lifting by himself.
This is exactly the mechanism you use to separate your money from the public's money. The amateur bettor bets the fastest horse. The amateur bettor bets the famous jockey. The herd geometry player bets the race shape. And the shape mathematically dictates that the S1 Ghost cannot catch the P3 satellite today.
What up Golden Tempo, the 19 horse? He's sitting at 30-1.
Golden Tempo operates as an S0. He finished third in the Louisiana Derby. It is the exact same structural story as Renegade, just with significantly less class and underlying talent. He is going to be far too far back. He needs a massive amount of help from a pace meltdown that isn't coming. And he is running into a shape that actively suppresses his running style.
So he's out.
Yeah. And Oselli, the 22, who drew in from the eligible list, falls into this exact same bucket. They are completely non-factors for the win.
Okay, so we have the theory, we have the mechanics, and we have the geometry mapped out. Now we have to execute. How do we actually bet this? Like, how does the final pick sheet translate this mountain of analysis into actionable wagers at the window?
The overarching betting strategy is hyper-focused on aggressively leveraging our Tier 1 and Tier 2 satellites while completely fading the public money pouring in on the ghosts. Let's start with the win bet.
Okay.
Commandment is the primary play. You want your heaviest win wager placed squarely on the 6-horse. However, the report advises placing a smaller saver bet on Further Ado, the 18, just in case his raw genetic talent is so overwhelming that it overcomes his trip dependency.
Right, you protect your investment against a generational freak. What about the exactus?
We lean directly into the Florida Derby replay we discussed earlier. You play an exacta box with Commandment and Further Ado. Then you play Commandment on top of our value satellites, the Puma and Chief Wallaby, and you cover yourself with Further Ado over Commandment. You are essentially monopolizing the second flight.
And what about the trifecta? The Derby is famous for those massive, life-changing trifecta payouts, and, mid-range handicappers live for them.
The report lays out a very specific core structure to maximize the geometry. In the first position, the win spot, we key Commandment. In the second position, we spread our coverage to Further Ado, the Puma, and Chief Wallaby.
Makes sense.
And then in the third position, we use Further Ado, the Puma, Chief Wallaby. And this is where we add in our grinder, Incredible.
I love that structure. Perfectly reflects the pace analysis. But the report also outlines a value tri-spread for the home run hitters, right?
It does. If you have the bankroll and want to catch the absolute chaos payout at the bottom of the ticket, you play Commandment and Further Ado in the first spot. You play them over the Puma and Chief Wallaby in the second spot, and then you just hit the L button in the third spot.
Explain the logic behind the L button for that third spot for a second. Why throw money at horses we just said have no chance?
Because of the nature of a compression derby. Once the elite satellites surge to the front and definitively win the race, the horses immediately behind them often check up or get exhausted. This allows the truly irrelevant horses, or the deep ghosts like Renegade who are making elite, meaningless runs, to come clunking up at the very end to pick up the pieces for third place.
I see.
By hitting the L button in the third slot, you guarantee that if a 60-to-1 shot manages to stagger into third, you catch that massive inflated price.
That is brilliant. Okay, I want to recap the camera-ready line, pulled directly from the report's conclusion. This isn't a chaos derby, it's a positioning derby. The late scratches of Silent Tactic and Full Effort didn't ruin the race. They simply clarified the physics. They made the winning lane significantly less crowded. We are heavily leveraged on the horses sitting just behind the early speed, waiting in the clean air to strike.
Exactly. We identified the false anchors, we mathematically mapped the fragile pressure, and we found our definitive winner resting comfortably in the second flight. It all comes back to trusting the geometry over the raw numbers.
And before we get out of here, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. Something to mull over while you're standing in line, waiting for the gates to open. We touched on this earlier, but it deserves your full attention. We talk all the time about how herd geometry gives you an edge over the betting public because the public only looks at raw speed and class. But think about the macro implications of the breeding discussion we just had.
Oh, the genetic evolution of the sport.
Exactly. Look at the sires of our top horses today. Commandment is by Into Mischief. Further Ado is by Gunrunner. The Puma is by Essential Quality. Chief Wallaby is by Constitution. Modern bloodstock agents aren't stupid. They're actively utilizing data algorithms just like Brisnet. Are we reaching a point where breeders are intentionally engineering horses to have the tactical patience to sit forth, take dirt in their face, and wait?
It's entirely possible.
Right. If genetics are actively hardwiring these satellite temperaments into the very DNA of the breed, replacing the old wire-to-wire speed models, how is that going to fundamentally change the shape of the Kentucky Derby by the year 2030?
I mean, if the baseline thoroughbred in the next decade becomes a tactical, patient P3, the entire physics of the pressure system evolves, we might literally never see a sharp collapse again.
It is a massive shift to think about. But until then, remember the boulder in the river. Let the chaos flow past you, find the clean channel, and trust the geometry, not the hype, when you step up to the betting window today. Thanks for joining our deep dive into the source material. We'll see you next time.